Hi there, my name is Hugh Salkind. My company name is Hugh Glass, so you can find me under that name on the internet or just under my name, Hugh Salkind. I'm teaching here at the Corning Museum of Glass at the studio. I'm co-teaching with Suellen Fowler. Me and Suellen Fowler have been working together since 2010, and I'm going to do a demonstration on a screw top bottle, which is something that's been very popular for a product of mine that a lot of people would probably like to see how it's done. And so I'm going to proceed and show you how to do a demo of making a bottle with a screw top. And so I first start with my tubing here, which is 22 millimeter standard wall tubing on a 12 millimeter handle with its heavy wall handle. And I'm going to heat it up, introduce it to the flame a little bit just to get a little base heat into the piece. And that's more to know that it won't crack later on while I'm applying a decoration to it. I'm going to decorate this tube with what's referred to as a dot box design, and that'll become more apparent as I get into it. And I'm going to put dots, and they're going to make little boxes in between. And I'm using 24 karat gold, which is a Canadian maple leaf coin. It's the pure gold that I like to use. And this technique is called whole metal deposition fuming, which is quite a mouthful. So a lot of people have just shortened it to the words fuming. And I'm using 24 karat gold. I'll repeat that again so people don't get nervous that I'm doing something that might be not so good for my health. 24 karat gold is very inert, and humans have been around it for a long time. And I just had the gold pop off, but I got enough on there. Some people prefer to work with 22 karat gold. I like the color of 24 karat gold, and I have a feeling that when working with the metals, you kind of want the purest of substances that you could find. So that's why I'm using this. I'm just going to apply a little bit more just to make sure that I got a nice mirror finish on there. And this technique of using whole metals to deposit on the glass came from the person I learned to blow glass from, and his name is Bob Snodgrass, Robert Earl Snodgrass Jr. to be exact. And he is quite infamous in the lamp working community. He's definitely worth checking out. And if you're watching this, Bob, hey, how you doing? So I'm going to start by laying down a series of clear dots over the gold fume. I'm going to make sure that these dots touch each other just slightly on the edges. And I'm going to do this in an up and down pattern where I go from top to bottom and then bottom to top. Sometimes when doing this decoration, some people will go around and around, and that means going around this way instead of up and down. It really doesn't matter as long as the end effect is that the dots are barely touching each other on all sides. And the reason why I do go up and down is because my heat base moves from the top to the bottom as I'm putting more dots on here. I'm using a 6 millimeter rod because I find with this size tubing it makes for a nice even pattern on there. And so I'll just keep this going up and down. And after I do these dots like this, I'm going to fill in the gaps in between the dots with a colored glass. And that's why it's referred to as a dot box. Right now I'm creating the dots, and by having that separation in between the dots, that will eventually become a box pattern. And this is a very popular pattern. You'll see it in a lot of tile work in bathrooms, and once you recognize it, you'll see it in all over the place. And we'll keep going. So when I'm putting the rod in the flame to heat it up, I'm rolling it around a little bit so I heat all sides of the rod. So when I do press it down on the glass, it makes for a nice even dot. So I'm keeping the glass warm by keeping it near the flame. I'm working right in the flame and a little bit out. And sometimes the dots might not completely touch each other, so I just add a little bit of extra glass to make sure they are touching each other. And this is all going to be melted smooth in the final product. So the last dots. And one last dot. So I'm going to use this piece of commercial color glass. This comes from North Star. It's called Stargazer, and I'm going to fill the boxes in with the Stargazer. And North Star has been very generous and has donated to our class for as long as I've been working with Suellen. And just want to thank them, give them a little shout out for donating this color. And this is a purple color that for the longest time we had a lot of issues having a very brilliant, vibrant purple. And this one kind of fits the bill for what I like. And there's different shades out there, different colors. There's another similar color that's on the bluer phase that's called Empire, and that's the one Suellen likes to use for her purple. And it might also have to do with the atmosphere of the torch that we use. Suellen works on a PM2D from Bethlehem, and this is a CC burner from Carlisle, and they have a different flame configuration to them. The center fire of this torch is a pre-mixed torch, and so it's making that kind of noise that you're hearing right now, that kind of grinding noise. And it makes for a different atmosphere of the torch than a surface mixed torch, which is what's on the outer fire of this torch. And the difference between the two is literally where the gases are combined, whether they're combined in a mixing chamber inside the torch, which would be a premix, or mixed at the surface of the torch, which is a surface mix. And this color in particular seems to react a little bit differently because of the flame characteristics. And I think that might be the difference why we both choose a different color to make almost a similar color purple. And this torch was actually designed by Corning, hence the name CC Burner. It was for Corning and Carlisle. Corning made the plans for this torch, and Carlisle was the one who made it for him. So there's a little bit of history. Okay, now that I have my pattern on there, I'm going to melt it in. So to do that, I need to put a punty on the end, which is just a solid rod. And I'm using 6 mil for a handle. So I'm first going to go in and work the very bottom of this, or the part that's towards my right hand, just to get the heat to sink into it a little bit and make sure the bottom is nice and straight. And then I'm going to turn the bigger flame of this torch on to melt the rest of it in. It'll be a little bit quieter, and that is a surface mix part of this torch. Give a little bit of puff to blow it out, and I'm rotating it to keep it straight on axis. Now I'll turn the outer fire on. And I'll work it a little further out in the flame, because this is a much hotter flame, or much more potent flame. I don't know about heat necessarily. So I'm just rotating it in the flame until I see those dots become nice and smooth. And this is hot enough now that if I was to let go with one of my hands, they would just flop down on the table. So it's really warm, and I'm really holding it in place while turning it and allowing it to condense on itself. I'm not really pushing or pulling on the glass. I'm allowing it to melt on its own and create its own form. Now that those are smooth, I come out of the flame and rotate it, let it cool down a little bit. Give it a couple little puffs to see what size it's going to be. And when I do objects that have a pattern to them like this, I'll generally melt in my pattern and then shape the object that I'm going to make. And so it's a kind of a two-part process. For this, the shape is going to be relatively what we see because like I said, I'm making a small bottle, and it's going to be very cylindrical, very much like a tube. And I'm doing this because one of the products that I make that a lot of people like are what's called a dropper bottle. And that is a bottle that has a commercial thread top to it that you could put a dropper for, like an eyedropper, for different liquids and medicines and things like that. And Suellen, who's going to do a demo after me, she makes beautiful bottles also, but she does a different type of bottle, so this hopefully will complement the bottle knowledge.
And the dot knowledge.
And the dot. Yep, Suellen does beautiful dots. And so now that I have those completely melted in, smooth, now I'm going to shape this a little bit. It's a little wider than what I want right now. I really like the sparkliness of the gold, so I've been taking a little bit of care to make sure that it stays nice and shiny. If you use a lot more oxygen in your torch, there's a good chance that you'll end up making this color be more on the orange phase than on the purple or pink phase. So if you're having problems at home working with your gold, you might want to turn your oxygen pressure down a little bit. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so now I have my blank, and I'm going to open up the top and put a screw top on it, but that's going to take a few seconds to prepare that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to open this bottle up, and then I'm going to stick it in the annealer to stay warm while I prepare the top for the bottle. And when I open something up, I'm just what we refer to as picking it open. So I'm pulling the glass very thin. I'll do this with just a center fire. And so that glass that I pulled off was very thin, but I want to pull off that same amount of glass one more time so it's even thinner. So now that is paper thin. I can come to my tap bucket and give it a little bit of a wipe like that, and it opens it up. And because I left a little bit of glass on there, there might be some glass chunks in there. So I'm going to blow through this just to make sure there's nothing in there. So that's what that maneuver is. And now I'm going to use a reamer to ream it open. And this is a graphite reamer, so I can put it near the flame without having too much issues. And this is a paddle with a reamer attached to it, which is a relatively new tool at least that I've known about, and it's one of the more useful tools that I highly suggest getting. A tool like this is sometimes referred to as a finishing tool that we use in the pipe trade. So I'm now going to put this in the kiln to stay warm while I do a little preparatory work for the screw threads. And what those are is, this is the blank that comes from, I got these from ABR Imagery. You can buy them in many different places, but it's a commercial screw top thread for scientific work. And I use these in particular instead of making my own threads, because these are an exact millimeter, so I could buy multiple tops that'll fit it. Also, they're watertight, so if this was to be in your pocket or something like that, you would not spill the contents out. And going to make what's called a cold seal on the top of this, and then I'm going to put this on that bottle. So to create a cold seal, it means that one of these pieces of glass is going to be glowing and one of them is not. But just to make sure that this will work, I'm going to introduce the screw top to the flame, get it to glow just a little bit so that I know that it won't crack later on. Because these are mechanically made, sometimes they have a little inherent stress in them, and when you introduce them to the flame, they want to crack. So now that I did that, I know that it's good to go. I'm going to take my 12mm heavy wall tubing here and create the cold seal, which means that the tubing in my right hand is going to be glowing and mushy, and then my left hand is warm to the touch, but it's not moving anywhere. So I put it on there and rotate it while it's warm so it stays straight on axis, hopefully. And then now I have to be very careful not to bump it, because that is a cold seal and I want them to come apart, but I don't want it to come apart at the wrong time. So, and this is a 14mm size. I also have an 18mm one here. I feel if I have a backup, then the first one will work. If I don't have a backup, the first one will probably not work, and that's a little bit of Murphy's Law, and that's a little bit of glass logic, which is something we got to live with. So now I'm just going to do the same thing as far as picking it open. And again, I want to make this nice and thin so that when I do tap it off, I don't tap off the cold seal. So this can be a little bit tricky or temperamental. So again, I come over here and just slightly get it open. Blow through it to make sure there's no chunks. And here, because that is a smaller hole and my reamer won't fit in it, I'm using a brass reamer, which I normally don't use except for on the road. And that's because our graphite tools are very fragile, and if you drop them, they break. And so this I could drop, and I'm in a teaching situation. And in a teaching situation, things always tend to go awry sometimes, so I bring tools that can handle, that are appropriate for the situation. So here I'm actually going to fume a little bit of pure silver, which also comes from a trade coin. The reason why I buy my gold and silver in trade coins is they're actually a monetary value, which means that a division of the government actually has said that this is as pure materials as you're going to be able to find. So these coins have a stamping on it of 999. And actually, this silver I'm using here is from Canada, and it actually has 49 stamped on the coin. So that's how pure it is. That's what those nines are referring to. And the gold that I'm using has actually got 5 nines, so it's even purer. And one of the other benefits of doing this is using the silver on the top here is it makes it antibacterial and antimicrobial. So when actually putting things in here, they're less likely to have any kind of funguses or anything grow on it because of the silver coating. So I just attach these two together. I have an open end to my tube, so I can't blow into it, so I need to do something about that. And so I'm just going to fire cut it down here at the bottom. Just like that. Now I can blow into it because I have it's not open on both ends. And I'll work on that seal of where I put the top, because that seal right now is very temporary. And I need to clean off my plenty. So just rotate it in the flame. And the tweezers that I just used are tungsten tweezers, so the tips of them are made out of tungsten, and I like to use those in particular. Tweezers are one of your best friends when blowing glass. It's what your two fingers, whenever you want to do something with want to grab something with these two fingers, you use the tweezers. And so now I could come and work on that seal. Gonna make a little sharper flame. So a little bit of an adjustment. And because one side of the seal is much thicker than the other part, I'm going to put the flame more on the thicker part of the glass than on the thinner part of the glass. And let the thinner part of the glass come to the thicker part of the glass. So this is an end seal, and I'm just making sure that it's nice and smooth before I blow into it. And I might have to work it a couple of times because there is quite a difference in the thickness between these two. So I'm rotating and blowing into it. And I still see that that seal has a little bit of a seam in there, so I'm going to keep working that until that seam is gone. And when things are sealed together properly, they become one piece of glass. And so, again, I'm kind of holding the thicker piece of glass upright so the heat will rise up into it. And it's now starting to look the way I want it to. So now I'll do a little bit of shaping. And when doing these seals, it's also the neck of the bottle. And so you want to be a little bit careful when doing these so that the cap that fits on it will seat on the bottle properly. If I was to blow this neck out too wide, the cap will not be able to seat properly because it'll stop on the neck itself and it will leak at that point. So that's something I learned the hard way. But this looks like it's pretty good here. And so there is a little bit of shaping to the bottle that I do for that reason, so that mechanically it'll work properly, because it has a screw top. And again, just like my pattern, I made sure that seal was nice, and then I shaped it a little bit. And so now that that top is sealed on, and sometimes it's hard to see real well with this light, so holding it up and looking through the wall thickness, that's what I was doing there. I think I'm just going to give it one last little bit of attention. And I'm being very careful not to hit the threads, because that's what makes the bottle seal. And so if I was to heat those up, they wouldn't be threads anymore. And that's looking pretty good. So now I'll form the bottom of the bottle, which is down here in my left hand. And one of the things I like to do with my bottles is I like to, or all of my glass in particular, is I like to sign it. I like to put my name or my initials on it. And what I've realized over the years that if the glass that isn't signed by the glass blowers, when this is around longer than I am, no one's really going to know who made it. So that's what the signature is there for. And so it'll be attributed to me and not Corning or not the other things that, you know, that this is being attributed to. And I highly suggest, if you're proud of your work, to sign it. So I'm just pulling a little stringer. And I'm just going to do my initials because this is kind of small. On my bigger pieces, I'll actually write my full name. But on here, I'm just going to put a little H and an S. I'm working with a hair stringer, so that's why I lowered the flame so much. And I did that so it gets smaller when I make the bottom of the bottle. So I could write in a bigger fashion, but it'll look much smaller. I'm heating up the bottom, and I'm going to flatten it so it stand upright. Doing pretty good on time. And when I flatten this, I'm going to rotate it as I'm flattening so it stays relatively straight on axis. And that way, when this bottle is standing up, I know that it'll stand up nice and straight. And sometimes I have to do this a handful of times to get it to be nice and flat on the bottom so it stands upright. But the rotation as you're pushing it down is very essential, at least for me, so I have it nice and centered. So I know that it works, and then after I do that, I go back into the flame to relieve any strain that's on the bottom of the piece. And that might look like little ripple marks on the bottom. And that is from working on this piece of graphite. The graphite has frozen the outside of the glass, so it leaves those little bit of ripple marks on it. And that's strain in the glass. And that'll end up making the piece maybe break later on. And this looks pretty good. So now I'm going to do the final maneuver, which hopefully, if my cold seal worked out fine, this will be fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these diamond shears, and I'm actually going to hold it, and yep, came right apart. It's exactly the way I wanted it to, textbook style. Yay. So I'm going to use these claw grabbers to just flame polish the very top, but because these are metal tool, I want to get them warm a little bit before I put it on the bottle itself. Now I'm holding it, and I'm going to use a very light flame because I just want to fire polish. I don't want to melt, I just want to polish, and that means just to bring it up to a glow. And I could look at the top too to make sure there's no lumps or chunks or anything like that. But that one came off exactly the way that I wanted it to. So there we go. That is my finished product. I will hold it up to the camera so you guys can see it. I'll put it on the marver here so we could all take a look at it. And I will stick that into the annealer because of all the work I did to it. I want it to last, like I said, hopefully longer than me. And so I need to anneal this. And there. When it's
sorry, made a big noise.
When it's cooled down, I'll be able to put the plastic cap on there, but I can't do it now because it's hot. So that's my demonstration. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it.
Yay.
And next, in a minute here, we'll have Suellen Fowler doing a demo.
Yay.
I just have to do a little bit of cleanup and get her torch up here.
Did I turn myself on?
Sorry about my mess, Suellen.
Oh, don't worry about it.
I know.
I'm going to make a bigger one.
And
okay. Yeah, put mine. I'm going to put this over here just.
And you'll notice with Suellen's torch, it has a couple extra hoses attached to it, and that's because it's a water-cooled torch. And so there's actually water flowing through this torch. And so I'm going to make sure that the water lines are on there nice and tight so they don't leak. And I got to remember to turn the pump back on. And it's leaking a little bit.
Oh, no.
And it's part of having a water-cooled torch. Sometimes it'll leak a little bit of water, but it's water, so it's no big deal. Let's try that now. There we go.
Okay.
Much better. Okay. So I'll grab some of my tools just so they're out of your way.
Okay.
And you're up.
There we go. Okie dokie. All right. So I'm Suellen Fowler, and here co-teaching with Hugh Salkind, who you just saw. And I'm going to sit down here and, oops, what am I on? Oh, it's the thingamajig. Okay. Sorry. Oops. There we go. Okay. Now, I am pretty well known for having discovered certain oxide formulas and hand mixing my own color a lot of the time. And recently I've been playing around with the new hot color from Molten Aura Labs, Electrum. Can you see that there? And what I've done here is I've combined my hobnail pattern with the Electrum, and I'm using Carmeline, which is a color that comes from North Star in slugs, and it's a really very pretty, slightly dichroic, kind of rosy pink. And I love the way the light plays on these things. So I'm going to make a little miniature with it. And let's see, I have a 9mm blowpipe. Oh, use the zipper. And I was taught to work with my torch pretty vertical. Because I'm using a style of flame working that I refer to as offhand, because it's working on the end of a blowpipe. And this is a set of techniques that was developed by John Burton. So I'm going to clean off my blowpipe. Now I'm going to puff out that end a little bit. So, as I said, I've been playing around with this Electrum, and I've pulled it down. You can pull it down quite fine, and you'll still get like the full opaque, shiny effect. It is a little bit sensitive to being overheated. That'll darken it, and you'll lose your shine. What's my pressures?
It's the same as it was before.
Okay. Yep. Just like 5 and 20?
Yeah, 5 on the propane and 20. I'm not
sure. You
didn't
change it?
No, I did not change
that
it.
Should be
I
okay.
used your pressures.
All right. Because of my history of hand mixing color, the first couple times I messed with the Molten Aura, I did burn it out a little bit. So that's why I'm trying to be very careful with this. So I think it likes a nice neutral flame. Okay, so I'm going to start here. I'm just going to coil around the piece of tubing. And all the rings are touching. Coming around here. So instead of an oxidizing flame, I'm just kind of aiming for a nice, neutral, fluffy, more gentle flame. But when you're hand mixing with a lot of silver in your formula, you really want to have a more oxidizing atmosphere in your torch.
Is there any advantage to starting at one end of the tube or the other?
Yeah. The heat goes in at the top, and because I have this slightly tipped, it'll then get the next ring, and it allows you to control the melt with your rotation.
And when you were coiling on, did it matter when you started at one end?
No, you could go either way. So there you can see, I'm not directly heating that final coil, but the heat from the molten glass at the top will start to bring it in. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to just shape it a little bit more. Such a tiny thing, you wouldn't think it would need much shaping. And I'll put a little reinforcing stripe on it, on the necks, on the connection of the bubble to the blowpipe. Okay. There, so you see how nice and shiny that is? It's so much fun. Clean that. So this is just going to lap up a tiny bit. And then I draw down about a ½ an inch or so and pull off through the flame. It's important to do that because that's only a half sealed portion in there. And if you have a big spike on it, it'll set up a strain and it'll crack. And then your bubble will fall off of your blowpipe. There. Okay. Got a little uneven there, but that's okay. Okay. All right. So now I have my bit of carmeline, which is so pretty. And I'm just going to pull out a little stringer. And then I'll apply a kind of staggered dot pattern. I got in the habit of calling this a hobnail pattern because John Burton referred to raised dots as hobnails. So, and because my torch is water cooled, I can kind of brace my finger against the collar here while I am applying my pattern. So I'm just lightly heating. There we go. That's pretty good. And in order to get these very tiny little dots, these tiny little hobnails, I have my flame turned down, maybe turn it down a little bit more, and I'm almost heating the surface of the bubble more than the tip of the rod. That enables me to get a very small, fine dot. I'm going to just work this in a little bit right now. With a little piece like this, it's probably not a big deal to worry too much about your heat, but when I'm working on larger hobnail bottles or hobnail ornaments, you have to really get your hobnails warmed up periodically. So you do like a section. I like to do 3 rows of something, and then I'll kind of warm everything up and fuse it in a little bit more. So there we go. That's what we got so far. Can I see? Okay. See, get in there. Oh, you can do it. Oh. There we go. Okay. So now, just completing a little pattern, an interstitial kind of pattern. And put on another, oops, that one got blended. There we go. Okay. There we go. Down for a second there. Yeah. Heat that up again. Which percent is the hot side? Oh, yeah, okay.
So you heated it up because the dots were bigger?
Yeah, I just wanted to put a little heat into it, everything. There. So now I'm just going to do tiny, tiny hobnails all the way to the end. I hope everybody can stay awake.
For a beginner, would it be easier to do that from a stringer?
Not this particular technique. I think it would be harder to control the size of the dot you're applying. This way, I'm really only heating the very tip, that just little pointy thing there. And as I said, it's more of a heating the surface than it is the rod, the tip of the rod. There we go.
Yeah.
Just another couple dots.
Right there.
There we go. All right, now, turn my flame back up. I need a bit. And get my, just a little more maybe. There's a slight difference in the viscosity between the background color, the electrum, and the carmeline. The carmeline is a little bit stiffer, so I'm always kind of fiddling a little bit with my settings. And I'll get those all fused in, then I'll pull my little shorty neck and get my final shape. And then I will do something I don't usually do. I'll finish the little miniature off on a punty. Most of my bottles have a coiled foot, and you could not finish that bottle off hot on a punty. That would break your foot. So I let the regular, larger perfume bottles rest and come to room temperature before I cut them off of the blowpipe and make a lip and a stopper. Okay, here we go. We're getting there. And this is very round right now. I'm going to want to elongate it slightly before I pull the neck. There we go. Just getting those last little bumps out of it. All right, so I'm gonna let it hang, give it a little puff. And there I was just heating the bottom so that I didn't expand and thin out the top of my bubble. So let's stop for a second and let's see how my little as it's cooling off, you're going to see the color shifting, and just the impression of depth that the transparent colors against this metallic color is just, I just love it. I find this so much fun.
And you put dots on the whole bottom too.
Yeah, I went all the way down. I don't know how well everybody can see it because it's not a very big piece right now, but it definitely has that nice pink contrast. Clean off my punty. There. There we go. Get that on straight. Okay, let me see how that feels. That feels pretty good. It's always a little tricky trying to get your punty on straight, but as you rotate it, if you can tell if it's pretty straight because you're not going to feel that crankshaft motion. So now I'm going to just go in here and heat up.
And your heat is really on the piece, not on the tube.
I'm not directing heat to the reinforcing stripes at all. They're right next to it, and they are affected a bit by it, by the peripheral heat. But I'm mostly just trying to do a little shorty neck, which is kind of what I'm getting now.
So you pull it slightly.
I was letting it drift. Yeah, there we go. So now we have a nice. There we are. Okay. And I'm letting the glow go out of it. As stiff and short the viscosity of borosilicate is, it's astonishing how much it likes to distort when it isn't quite set. It'll just throw you completely off. Now I'm going to check here. I'm just looking to see if I need to straighten out. I don't need very much, maybe just a little wiggle. Nope. Don't want to come off for me, okay. There's my just want to blow this out a little bit more. There we go. Okay, we're getting there. All right, so now we have our nice shiny little miniature. And I'm gonna just flatten the bottom. Coming down one hand and then gently rotating. I'm not pressing real hard. A mistake people make when they're doing a flat bottom is trying to like press real hard and what happens is you end up going at a slant. So just as Hugh was showing, you just gently rotate it. And it's always kind of difficult to determine how well it stands on such a long blowpipe, especially a tiny little thing like that. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a poke in the bottom to make it a little more concave. All right, get in there. Little turn. Yeah, it's a little rocky, but I think it'll be fine. So, well, we'll see in a minute. Okay, that's pretty good. So this is going to be a pretty cold seal. I'm not going to weld this on hard. Up a little bit. Kind of looking to see that it's fairly centered. I jigged it off a little bit to one side. And now I'm going to pull that off. There we go. Crack it open. Please stay on my punty. Now, there's out. Now, in order to help me get this a little more open, I am going to make a little flat plug. Oops, that was exciting. And we're going to come back here. I didn't get it hot enough. There we go. See how open that is. Is it? That is a good question. Nope, it's not open. Okay. More opening. There we go. Ah, there we go. All the way through. Let's do that one more time. There's a little chunk out of the lip, so I want to work past that. So I'm just filing off a little bit of the edge. I'll take this. there. So a nice little flare. So there's my, looks good. My little Electrum miniature here. Take that off. Beat that butt a little bit. Pick a little glass off it. No, I don't want to use that. Kind of flailing around looking for my stuff here. Let's see how it stands. A little bit rocky, so we'll do it again. Oopsies. Okay. Ah. Nope, still a little rocky. Okay. Nope.
Do you ever think of having miniature tools for the miniature pieces and, the tools 8 times the
Yeah,
size?
it would be kind of a fun thing, wouldn't it? Yeah. I need to give this a better poke. Oops. Well, I'm having one of those days. Let's see. Let's see if that improved it. Improved it a little bit. It's a little bit on the crooked side. There we go. Okay, so there's our little piece. And when it's cool, I have to put it into the kiln, or not the kiln, the vermiculite. But when it's cool, I'll make a little stopper for it. And that's it. I'm just going to blacken it in the gas. Oh, thank you. So I'm just blackening it, just real quick, blackening it in the flame, which does not really anneal it or anything. What it does is it eases the transition to room temperature vermiculite. That's all. So there we go.
Mm-hmm.